Hello, 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 hello. John Mason, how is everybody? I have come to the conclusion that elites, both political and economic, never get the message or, or get the wrong message when people they traditionally oppress and put down stand up to them. All they think about is trying some way to retain their former power. They don't totally get their power back entirely, but they they use some subterfuges to undermine the progress of their formerly oppressed people they had under control. Case in point, last Tuesday in Minneapolis, Derek Chauvin was found guilty on all 3 counts in the death of George Floyd. All 3 counts. And there was a cheering, and there was a fact that maybe there could be some accountability for abuse of police officers. But no. On that same day, there was an incident in, I believe, Indianapolis, where a young woman named Ma'Khia Bryant was killed holding a knife in the middle of this altercation with neighbors. I don't know what. Maybe it was Columbus. It was Columbus, Ohio. What's that about? What's that about? It's like there have been incidences of police abuse before George Floyd, like Rodney King and Eric Gardner and Breonna Taylor and Daunte Wright. And they don't get the message. They don't try to meet halfway their former oppressors, their former victims, their former subjects. They just want to maintain control. Case in point again. I have been reading this wonderful anthology of essays called Confronting a Revolution. It is published in the mid-1980s as a series of essays about the various social revolutions that went on in the Central American states, Guatemala, El Salvador, Honduras, and Nicaragua. And it's the old story, this ruling elite of planters and plantation owners rule over a vast majority of its subjects, owning all the wealth, while the vast majority live in poverty. And the ruling elite have the military on their side. And the military becomes a glorified mafia dealing with taking money for itself, looking out for its own interests, getting rich off of business deals, both legal and illegal. Same old story. And our government, all through the 50s, 60s, 70s, and our former government previously paid very little attention to the upheavals in the affairs of the nations in Central America, because it's the source of their bananas and their coffee and their cotton. And then, and all through the 50s, 60s, and 70s, there have been protests and demonstrations, and a lot of times armed revolt against these regimes. our government tries to prop up these regimes, trying to keep the system in place while trying to reform the most oppressive parts of those regimes, such as trying more industrialization, greater greater human rights, more rights to organize workers and farmers and students. But the emphasis still comes back on security. And our government trains the military and security forces, which are no solution but part of the problem. This particularly came up after the Cuban Revolution. Instead of and in the middle it was in the middle of the Cold War, with everything that our government didn't like was communist, and that had to be resisted, such as the administration in Guatemala of Jacobo Arbenz Guzman, a reformist military officer whose cardinal sin was to try to expropriate from United Fruit a little bit of crappy little unused land. All these big fruit conglomerates purchase millions of acres of land, and they don't cultivate it for farming. Why? What? And our government and the administration of Dwight Eisenhower with John Foster Dulles as Secretary of State, and was a partner of Sullivan and Cromwell, the law firm specializing in multinational corporations, decided this was unacceptable. By the way, Sullivan and Cromwell, United Fruit was one of Sullivan and Cromwell's big clients. And that what drove our foreign policy. All forms of social reform, all movements of social reform, demonstrations of workers and farmers, was treated like something originating from Moscow. But the causes were internal. The oppressive situation in those countries were what caused it. And it lasted on through the Carter administration. The Carter administration was sincere of being concerned about human rights as a prerequisite for in our foreign policy. However, our foreign policy was still obsessed with maintaining order and stability, and which means trying to prop up the current oppressive regimes that we've been propping up for decades, and doing everything we can to get the so-called left out of it, which means the popular organizations, the unions, the organization of workers and farmers and students and people on the bottom rung of society in those countries. We just have to, our foreign policy wizards just had to keep them out. So the lesson could have been to not try to interfere in the new, when the old regime is overthrown, do not interfere with the forming of the new government. If the forming of the new government means bringing the so-called left-wing organizations, the popular organizations, farmers and workers and professionals and students, good. But no, they haven't learned that lesson, and they stick with trying to find some sort of center, supposedly between the military and the which the right dominates, which is one of the enforcers of the right wing, the old regime of the old cattle ranchers and plantation owners, and they just don't get it. They don't understand that the military. I'm thinking particularly about El Salvador. In 1979, a civilian military junta took over after the military dictatorship, and the Carter administration did everything in its power to keep out the left-wing parties and factions from the new government. Talking about a center. But there was no center. All was left with the right wing dominating the military. And then the Reagan administration, in its fight against communism, tried to overthrow the Sandinista government in Nicaragua and tried to prop up the sorry excuse of a government in El Salvador, keeping up the myth of the centrist government. They haven't learned the lesson. Elites just never learned the lesson. Instead of saying, trying to reach an accommodation with the new parties, the new establishment, the new system, they try to take it over and reoppress the people they oppressed before. And the same is true in this country with the state Republican-dominated state legislatures, like in Georgia and Pennsylvania, are trying to implement these draconian voter registration laws, which keep people from, which are deliberately meant to keep people from voting. I'm talking about in Georgia, drop-off boxes for ballots are limited in number. Sunday voting is banned, and you can't even serve anybody food or water while they're waiting in line to vote. Waiting in line in the hot sun, senior citizen people waiting to vote. They haven't learned the lesson. And they think that we're just, the former subjects, the former people they oppress is just going to sit back and take it. They don't give it any thought. Just get back in power and stay in power. Not happening. We know the real story. A formerly dominant group, once its power is challenged, acts like they're going to be the oppressed ones. Rather than sharing rights, they think they're going to lose all their rights. It's like all or nothing to them. So instead of adjusting to the new situation, recognizing the equal rights of the people they formerly oppressed, they try to retain their power. So let's get ready to stand up to them and fight for our rights. And don't worry about some sort of center. The center is a myth. The center means that we can reach an accommodation with the other side, and they don't want to accommodate us. They want to dominate us. They want to reclaim their own throne, their own power for themselves, to our detriment. That's what it's about. Let's understand that. Let's organize ourselves. Let's educate ourselves and get ready for the fight. And it is a fight. Don't kid yourself. They're not going to give up easy. So we're not going to give up, period. At all. Okay. And I close with advertisement for Hemperific. It's a wonderful little CBD store on 15th and Snyder in South Philadelphia. They display the finest cannabis products like flowers and gummies and beverages. Look them up. HemperificLLC.com. And I must talk up my dear friend Michelle Snow, career coach extraordinaire. She will help you and guide you as you develop your small business and professional career, and help you network with other professionals and small businesses, building up their clientele. She's as much a cheerleader as a coach. Please look her up. growwithsnow.com. Okay, that's the end of my rant. Let's stay safe, stay strong, and stay together. We'll beat our former oppressors, and America will be free. Thanks. Bye.